Why have we come to earth? Do you remember? Why have we taken birth? Do you remember?
Thank you. Yeah. That's the same song you started last year with. Can you feel a brand new day? Can you feel a brand new day? All right. I can feel it too. You know it's going to be a serious talk when I bring this many books up to the podium. We're going to open today a theme and explore a theme for the entire year. And that theme is creating a world that works for all. We're going to get engaged with that process. We're going to get engaged with this. Ernest Holmes, this is part of his vision from clear back in 1927 when he wrote the What We Believe, which is in your programs and has been for quite a long time. And one of the points of what we believe is we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be achieved by all. I love that last part. It's sure to be attained by all. That means we got it. We just got to let it happen, right? So that reading that Damien did, the Global Heart Vision, was a vision that was created by a number of religious science leaders back in the early 2000s. And they said, you know, we need to have a vision of what it is we want the world to look like, what it is we want the world to feel like. Because we hear about the Hunger Project, right? And what does that focus on? Hunger. And we hear about the war on drugs, poverty, terrorism, you name it. And what does that focus on? War. And drugs, poverty, and terrorism, right? And so those are the images, the image words that we put into our mind, and we know better than to put image words like that into our mind. We know that the image words we want to put in our minds and work with are the ones that are in the direction we want to go, not the direction we don't want to go. And so I said, what would that look like? What would that be if we start to define what is a world that works for everyone, look and feel like, and what are some of the words, what are some of the descriptors that we would have around that? And so that vision was created back then. And we've been hanging around with that vision. And finally, earlier this past year, Dr. Ken Gordon, who's the community spiritual leader, and Edward Vilhune, who's the minister over the hill in Santa Rosa, said, wouldn't it be great if we could get all the churches, or a lot of the churches in the religious science movement, all focused on this vision at once and doing something about it? And so it was such a great idea, took off like wildfire, that a friend of mine, when she talked to Edward in August at a convention, said, how many churches do you have in alignment with that? And he said, 3. Fortunately, however, other people finally caught the vision, caught the idea, caught the fire, because today there are well over 100 churches, religious science churches throughout the world who are talking about this, and this is their theme for the year. This is our collective theme for the year. What that means is that there are thousands of people around the world focusing on this. How can I be part of the consciousness that shows up as a world that works for all? And we know that whenever we put 2 or more together, and thousands are more than 2. Yeah, that math still does work. It's a very powerful process. We're engaged in a powerful community spiritual practice that goes from our community out around the world. Now, the thing with a world that works for everyone, that sounds so impossible right now, doesn't it? Okay? It sounds so big and so out there. And yet, if we just sit there and go, well, that's too big, that's too out there, let's just not worry about that. Let's just take on some little, my life's good. This year I'd like to improve my income by 10% and maybe improve my relationship by about 5%. Maybe I should go on my favorite dating site, farmersonly.com. I'm a city folk, so I wouldn't get it anyway. So. But no, why don't we take on something big? Because in taking on something big, in taking on, one of my teachers used to call this a big, hairy, audacious goal, or big, hairy, audacious intention, big, hairy, audacious vision, whatever you want to call it. It's something we sit there and go, I can't do this by myself. I'm going to need some divine process, divine help, and help from other people. See, we can't do this by ourselves, can we? Okay? But we can be part of the process. And if we just make some progress in that direction that wouldn't have been made otherwise, we will be a richer world and we will be richer people for it. Because this process, if you and I engage in it, will grow us. Some of us will say, yeah, and some of us, like my friend Melissa Felipe, who was here a few months ago, she has a wonderful song called Kicking and Screaming Down the Path of Transformation. And so some of us will experience that, But we will grow if we will engage ourselves in this. So I want to define the vision, the difference between a vision and a goal. A goal is something that is a measurable, tangible outcome that I can define and say, this is what I want to do. If I want to, lose a certain amount of weight, if I want to gain a certain amount of income, if I want to, do something with my relationship, if I want to buy a new car or a new house, if I want to do something, there's a tangible goal, and usually a process, a path that I can see to do it, okay? That's a goal. Vision, on the other hand, is something that we don't have a measurable standard for, but we have a sense, we have a feeling for it. And that is what we're aiming at with this. This is a vision. It has an idea's sense of the end desired, and it requires faith in the process of getting there. Because it is so big, and we don't know how it's going to work. See, we vision for this church. I talked about the visioning that we're going to be doing tomorrow night. And we vision for this church, and once in a while a vision shows up, actually fairly frequently, things like, we'll be a beacon of light, okay? That doesn't mean we're going to stick a big beacon up on the top of the roof, that surrounds, the town, okay, or flashes around the town. What it means is we're going to take on a way of being the light itself as a community, being the love itself as a community. And so we take on this vision. The path in a vision is usually not known. Most of us have no idea how to create a world that works for all. I don't, anyways. Do you? Okay. And so we have to let it come through from us, through us. And it's why the doer part of our consciousness doesn't like visioning, by the way. I love, sometimes I lead visioning and people say, okay, that's the vision. Now what are we going to do? Got to do something, man. Got to do something about that. We just got that vision. It's hot off the press. We haven't had any time to sit down and think about it, let it digest or something, but let's go do something. Visioning is a process where we sit and let it percolate within us, and we percolate within it. Ernest Holmes says, I believe the divine pattern of perfection, not a plan, but a pattern, is resident in everything. Everything that has happened in evolution is but the unfoldment of that pattern. And that pattern contains that which is beyond our present perception. So what we are doing here is not trying to create something or make something happen. We are opening up to a pattern that wants to express through us, this pattern of divine perfection. This idea that we will be free, all of us will be free from suffering, and that is sure to be attained by all. That is the pattern that we're opening up to. And we don't need to make it happen, we need to make it welcome. We need to make it welcome. It doesn't need to be forced. It needs to be allowed. We need to be willing to say, I am willing to have that. Even if I don't have an idea right now, I'm willing to be the place where this vision begins to unfold in, through, and as me. And so as we go along this morning, I'm going to invite you to ask yourself that question. Am I willing to be a place where I allow that vision to unfold within me? Ernest Holmes also goes on to say, there is that which must wait until slumber passes from our eyes and the inertia from our minds. Michael Beckwith talks about us being asleep. And he says some of us are in deep sleep and we're bumping around in this world and we have no idea that we're asleep. We're just banging around into things, okay? You've met people like that, right? Okay? And then others of us are more light sleepers. We're high sleepers. We're beginning to wake up. We're beginning to have the awareness that we don't know everything. We're beginning to recognize that we are ignorant. Now you say, that's kind of awkward, David. We recognize that we're ignorant. Have you ever met a person who is ignorant but doesn't recognize it? Okay? They're absolutely certain of their ignorance. And they're usually about, like this, and just, I think last week I talked about the difference between a ruby and a stone. They're a stone. No light passes through. We recognize that even if we are imperfect, as Reverend Mary's class is going to work with, that we are still beginning to wake up and we still begin to know that we don't know it all. And that is a wonderful, beautiful, healthy place to be, because then we are open to learning something new. We are open to becoming something new. And that's the invitation I'm going to invite from you this year, is that you open up and be willing to be open to that process of learning, of growing. So this vision is not for us, it's not a call for us to go out there and make those people change. You know who those people are, right? They're the Donald, they're the Obama, they're the Hillary, they're the Bernie, they're the 49ers. They're Reverend David talking about football. They're that country, those people, that religion, them, those, they out there. This is not about that. This is not about going out and changing the world, them. This is about changing our consciousness. It is a call for us, you and me, to be willing to evolve. To evolve. To grow more than we have been. And what bad news, okay? This is a bad news talk. Somebody told me earlier, it's like, I'm looking forward to your good words. And I said, I have some good words, and I also have some bad words. It might be uncomfortable. It might be uncomfortable sometimes. Growth, have you noticed? Sometimes can be a little uncomfortable, because we have these cherished little areas of avoidance and patterns of avoidance. I don't want to face that. Let me watch TV instead. That sounds like a great class, but I suddenly realized I'm busy. I don't know what I'm busy doing yet, but I'm busy doing something. We may be called upon to wake up in the areas where we'd rather remain asleep, where it's far more comfortable to remain asleep. You ever had those mornings? I mean, where physically it's just like, I don't want to get up, I just want to remain asleep. Okay? And assuming that you didn't do anything the night before that would necessarily physically cause that, it probably is something that you're trying to avoid in that day that you just don't want to face in that day. And yeah, I'm just gonna stay in bed and maybe they'll all go away. So it's getting past that in our consciousness. And so our first places of growth will be looking at our shadow side. At our shadow side. We're going to make friends with our shadow. And the shadow is that which keeps us stuck in old dysfunctional patterns. And shadow work is kind of a dirty word in religious science, in some circles of religious science, because we're supposed to all look at the positive and the happy, happy, joy, joy, right? Okay? But the truth is that sometimes you find out and you become aware that you've been walking down a road with a lead weight dragging along behind you, or driving down the road with your parking brake engaged, and it might be good to notice that. because you'll start to move down the road more quickly once you're free of that. And so that's the purpose of doing shadow work, is not to dwell in it, not to, as a friend of mine says, you don't walk into the valley of death to make yourself a 4-star hotel resort and stay there. You'll walk through the valley of death to the other side, the fear of the shadow of death, to the other side. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing some processes. I'm going to invite you to take on some processes starting next week, that we're going to start to look at that shadow side and walk through it. And so I'm hoping that you'll engage with that process. Some of you will look and say, well, I've done stuff like that before. I don't need to do it now. That's where was that comfortable pattern in area of dysfunction? Cherish patterns of avoidance, yes. To all those who say, well, I've done that before, it's like, well, you had a really good meal once before. Did you stop after that? You heard a wonderful piece of music once before. Did you stop after that? There's some other things I could say that are probably not podium appropriate, but then did you stop after that? So we're going to start next week with that process. We may be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's designed to free us. It is designed to free us from patterns that are holding us back. And so I'm hoping that you'll join me in that, because we have to free ourselves. That's the first step we have to do. We're going to be working a lot this year with this book called Creating a World That Works for All. It's available in the bookstore by a wonderful person named Sharif Abdullah from up in Portland. Despite that name, he's from Portland. He's not Syrian. Or maybe he was, I don't know, but anyway. He says, our present world works for only a few. However, by shifting consciousness, then our culture and institutions, we can create a world that works for all. So did you notice the first part of that? The first thing to do on that was shifting our consciousness. Okay? So we've all seen people who tear off to change the world, and they try and change the world with the same consciousness that created the world. I know back in the 60s and early 70s when I was protesting the Vietnam War, I kind of did that. I went out and made war on those people who were making war to stop war. And making war on people doesn't stop war. We've tried that before as a culture. So we want to start to shift. Why should we? Why should we? We're religious scientists. Shouldn't we just be working on our own consciousness, our own, shifting our consciousness, getting our life together? My life's good. I don't have to worry about anything else. It's all going to happen. All that global warming stuff, that's going to happen after I die for most of the people in this room, right? I don't have to worry about that. Let the kids and the grandkids deal with that. Ernest Holmes tells us, and I love this quote, and it's a complicated quote, so stay with me on this. We live unto others. We live unto others because that which is myself is yourself. That which is yourself is myself. That which is ourself collectively and ourselves individually is the one and only self there is. There is no other self. If a person is hurting in Bangladesh, guess what? I'm hurting. If a person has no home because they got kicked out of Syria and nobody will take them, guess what? I'm homeless. If a person is walking down the streets of Reading and has no home, guess what? I'm homeless. This is not a new teaching. Jesus said it. Whatever you do to these, the least of my brethren, you do also unto me. It's been in every spiritual teaching throughout the planet. And the question is, will we wake up and see this? Will we wake up and start to see the other person and myself, all of us, as one? There was an exercise that I did long, long ago when I was taking personal growth seminars, where we were on a raft and there was some sort of a situation and it seemed like we couldn't get everybody on the raft to safety. And so we had to make the decision who gets kicked off the raft. Okay? Some of you have seen television programs made out of this stuff. When we finally got through with the exercise, we found out that the way was to find out a way to get everybody on the raft to safety. That was the exercise. It wasn't to get most people to safety. It was to find out the way to go beyond our 9-dot thinking, our in-the-box thinking, to say, how can we make this work? How can we make this work? And so that's what we're being called upon today, is how can I go beyond the ideas that I have of how the world works to make it work for everyone? And it will take getting out of our normal way and modes of thinking. I have a great earnest quote from that in a minute here. This week, what I wanted to invite you to do is 3 things. Number 1 is to be more awake. To be more awake. Just be awake and to be willing to be a place that the universe can start to make a better world through you. We good with that one? Okay. Number 2, every morning when you wake up, ask this question: how can I make the world a little better today? How can I make the world a little better today? It might be in my home. It might be at my work. It might be as I drive along the streets. It might be if I'm engaged with the church. It might be if I'm, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, how can I make the world a little better today? It might be that I smile at somebody that I would have never thought about. It might be that as I'm walking down the street, I stay present and I'm looking and seeing God walking down the street wherever I am, instead of normally just sitting there kind of zoned out thinking whatever I'm thinking. How can I make the world a little better today? And then number 3 is take an action. Take some sort of an action. So not just have this as an idea, how can I make the world, but do something with it. Okay? So that's our 3 things. Number 1 is be willing and be awake. Number 2 is ask myself that question, how can I make the world better? And number 3, take an action. Are you willing to do that this week? Okay, me too. I want to close with more of a reading from the tail end of this talk that Ernest Holmes gave. I'm quoting from a book called The Holmes Papers. And I love this because the chapter that he's in is called Our Mission in the World. This is back in about 1948 that he's actually doing this talk. It's a whole series of talks. Yeah, Our Mission to the World. So clear back in 1948, before we ever have this, quote, global heart vision, Ernest is asking the question, what is ours as religious scientists to give to the world? So it isn't just, we've heard some people, I've heard some people anyways, talk about that, it's about our life and we should just get our lives together and that's it. And he's saying, no, how can we take this out into the world? And that's been part of his vision throughout the whole time that he was alive. And it's a vision that we're hoping to carry on today. And so I want to close with the end of this talk. This is from a book. I have a thin version of it, an old version of it, but it's now collected together called the Ernest Holmes Papers. It's in the bookstore. If you go into the bookstore, it's on the right, to the right, on the shelves. Not that I've checked it out or anything. His quote is, and he's doing this after being together with this group of people from a particular church for 4 days on kind of a retreat and deep, intensive process. He says, we love each other. And I trust it shall be increasingly said that this is a group of people who love each other, who are at least making a bold effort to turn every negation into an affirmation, every denial into an acceptance, every no into a yes, every evil into a good, every lack, every want into an abundance. The universe imposes nothing upon us but a freedom so great that we tie the cords of that freedom around us in our ignorance and believe it is imposed upon us. We shall come into the divine inheritance of that which the universe has bequeathed to us only on its own terms, not on ours. I want to repeat that. We come into this inheritance on the universe's terms, not ours. Mary Morrissey in the Prosperity Plus class talks about a guy who walks into a bank, hands a check to the cashier and wants to cash the check. And she says, well, sir, you have to sign this check. And he says, well, if I sign the check and give it to you, then you're going to have the check and you could just run off with it and you'd have my money. And she goes, well, sir, I'm a bonded, licensed teller in the bank and an official of the bank, and I can assure you that's not going to happen, but the process is that you do have to sign the check so we can cash it. And he says, well, I'm not going to do that. She says, well, I can't help you. So he goes off and goes down to the street to another bank. does the same thing, has the same result. Not going to help you, can't help you, until you sign the check, we're not going to give you the money. Goes to the third bank. At the third bank, he's with the teller doing the same thing, and finally the teller gets exasperated with him, and she reaches underneath her desk, pulls out a plastic baseball bat, and whacks him on the head with a baseball bat, and says, "Sign the damn check." He signs the check, hands it over, she gives him the cash. He takes the cash, he goes back to the first teller of the first bank, and he says, "Look, that bank down the street, they gave me the cash." And she goes, "Yes, babe, I bet you still had to sign the check before you turned it over." And he said, "Well, yes, I did, but nobody ever explained it to me the way that they did." So we shall come into the divine inheritance of that which the universe has bequeathed to us only on its own terms, not on ours. That means we get our bloated nothingness out of the way, as Emerson would say. We shall not do it in exclusion. In other words, we're not going to do it by ourselves or just this little group over here. We shall not do it in hate. We shall not do it through unloveliness. We shall not do it just through the intellect. We need the intellect, God knows, and we could use a lot more of it than we have. Ernest with a little humor there. But there is another person inside us that we shall have to get together with. There is no God you and I will ever meet outside that thing which is in us now, as the immediate person that we are. The divine presence we seek to embody. We are the children of that light. God is real, personal to you and to me, to be communed with. Speak to him then, for he hears, and spirit with spirit shall meet. Closer is he than breathing. We shall have to speak to him in each other, and embrace him in each other, and love him in each other, that the eternal may come forth, may go forth through us now and anew into its own creation. We have to meet the Spirit within, and we have to meet the Spirit within each other. And it is there for us to commune with, it is there for us to talk to, it is there for us to listen to. And as he says, there is no God out there somewhere that we're ever going to meet, excepting the God that is right here within us. So this week I invite you to start to practice, if you haven't before, and if you have done it before, to go deeper with it, to meet that God within, and then to see that God in each and every person that we encounter this week. I want to close with a earnest prayer from actually that day. It's a short one, but it'll give you a flavor for how he was praying that on that particular day. Now let us turn deep, deep within, to your God and my God, to our Father in our heaven, that ineffable and infinite beauty that paints the rose, spreads its glory across the hilltops as the sun rises to bathe the valley in warmth and color and radiance of a new day, soft twilight shadows in the rose at hues of evening, and the song of the lark, and the laughter of children, and peace of the night, eternal and forever blessed. We are that which thou art, and thou art that which we are. Amen. Thank you.